there, my name's Kirsten. This is the Paper Knits Podcast. I am a knitter from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and I really love to knit, and I really love getting to talk about my knitting with all of you on the internet. Today we're going to talk about everything I've knit in 2025. Mostly focusing on the sweaters that I've knit because that's what I love the most. I ended up knitting quite a bit of other things this year too, and so I will also give them a chance to shine. One of those is like my favorite thing I've knit, and so I have to show that obviously. I have a very large pile of knits next to me on the couch and a lot of pages of notes that I went through and made. I decided that I should double check my gauge on my sweaters so that if I'm complaining about the fit of the sweater, I can know, is that because the pattern doesn't fit me well, or did I make a mistake, or is my gauge totally off, or do I not like the construction of it, whatever. And so I made notes about the gauge for the pattern, what size I made, what gauge I got, what size, what my circumference ended up being, etc. Yesterday I was updating my spreadsheet that I keep of all of my ins and outs of yarn, and so when I buy yarn, then I add it to my in column, and when I finish a project or if I sell a skein or something, then it's on my out column. I knew that I was going to have more yarn in than out, but like turns out it was a little bit more than I thought because I hadn't included some of my purchases in the list, and some of my like formulas were off, and so they weren't like catching all of the cells they were supposed to. Anyways, it's all fixed now, and I didn't knit as much this year as I have in years past, and I still bought a lot of yarn, but I did. One of the things I was trying to do this year was to focus on knitting some of my stash because I have quite a bit. I had a bad adventure in September of this year of finding a weird bug in my knitting room, and through that process then of treating all of my yarn, like I heat treated everything, I came face to face with every single skein of yarn that I own. Yeah, that was just really enlightening. And so did I buy more yarn on Boxing Day sales? Yes. Will I have yarn arriving into my house next week? Yes. But some of these things were deep stash yarn, and it feels really good to have turned them into something. So I will jump right in, I think. So what I'm wearing is the newspaper pullover by Locatelli, and this is a fingering weight 2-color brioche sweater, top down raglan, and you like alternate which is like the main color as you go. Hohi's sample is also knit in this black and white, and like it's just very striking. It had been on my knit list for like a really long time. This was my Christmas Eve cast on for 2024, and then I finished it in February of this year, and I really like it. It's one of my favorite things I knit this year. The pattern, because it's brioche, it's very stretchy. It's got nice drape. I made mine with Frankie Gray fibers, their merino fingering base, and I used 3 colors. The dark gray is called iron, and then the whites are either the folklore colorway or reputation colorway. And I think if I remember correctly, I wasn't sure if I was going to have enough if I only used one of the colorways. And so when I changed sections, then I used the other colorway. They look almost identical in this skein between the folklore and reputation. They're like Taylor Swift colorways, but technically they're different. I cannot tell. I wouldn't have remembered that if I hadn't like written it down in my notes. But I think the like black and white effect is very striking. I really like it. For some reason, I didn't want to gauge swatch for this one, and so I just cast on. I think anticipating that my gauge would end up being bigger than what it was supposed to be, and so I cast on for a size 4, which would have been 41 inches. I have a 44-inch bust. I ended up with about 49 inches, and so 5 inches of positive ease. Because my gauge is just bigger. Depending on where I measured it, it was like 16 to 18 stitches over 4 inches versus the pattern is supposed to be 21 stitches. So I think my just like jumping right in without swatching ended up working out okay. The yoke depth is a little bit long. I didn't actually measure what it's supposed to be and compare it to the pattern. Just like for my preference, it's a little bit long, but I think it's like worked out okay. One thing I wish I had done differently was just to make the cuffs a little bit looser. I can pull them up a little bit, but I can't pull them up very far. And I don't like that. Yeah, I'm often pulling up my sleeves, and it's uncomfortable, right? If they're not too tight, they just like sometimes the bind off especially is like really constricting, and that's not the case. Like there's still some like ease there, but they're just a little bit tight. So another thing I ran into with this one is that my numbers didn't always add up, and I didn't invest a lot of time into like double checking whether or not I had miscounted or if the pattern was wrong, but I think the pattern was wrong. So I'm not sure. This is an old pattern. It came out in 2021. So it's like probably if there was a mistake, it would have been updated, but I don't know. I didn't fuss about it too much. So this used 1,400 meters of yarn, and it's one that I reached for quite a bit. So yeah, I really like it. Very happy with how this one turned out. Okay, my lovely mannequin will show off the ones I just talked about. It's not doing a lot of favors to the stripe sequence there. What's happening? I have my warping board behind my mannequin because it's attached to cones. I might try and move it. BRB. Okay, I feel like that looks better. You can see more of it. So, one of my favorite knits to my least favorite knit, which was the next one I started. This is the Alchemy Pullover by Leslie Forrester or Knit California. It's a top-down drop shoulder sweater in DK weight yarn, and it has this like slip stitch detailing across the back, the shoulder, and then it goes down to the underarms. And it also has sort of an interesting decrease detail on the sleeves. This was inspired by a sweater worn by Taylor Swift. It had those same kind of details on it. And I really want to love this sweater, but I just don't. So I got gauge. This is the one in particular I wanted to double check to make sure that I was actually on gauge. And so that I can't say like, it doesn't fit me. And like, oh, just kidding, my like gauge is super off. I'm right on gauge, surprisingly with stitch and row gauge, which like never happens, right? But the shoulder construction of this, I believe is called a European shoulder construction. So that's what it looks like. So you cast on the back section. That method either uses increases or short rows to shape the back panel. And then you pick up along the edge and work forward and around the front. And I've discovered that I don't really like that construction. I don't feel like it's very comfortable. It feels kind of restricting on my back, and it's like having a seam like across the back of your shoulder. So like I often have to adjust patterns to add more short rows so that I get more of a tilt between the front and the back, because I find that sweaters creep up because I have a large bust, and like it's just like there's not enough. It just bunches up at my neck, and that really bothers me. But I also kind of wonder if this construction just like tends to pull things backwards anyways, and so then I find it kind of like pulls back. Anyways, it's not my favorite, and I don't wear it very often. So that's kind of too bad. One mistake I did make on this is that, although I think it all turned out okay, I cast on for a size 4, which had been my plan, I guess, to knit a size 4, but I accidentally increased up to a size 5 when I was doing the back increase section. And that means I have a little bit more ease than maybe what I would have planned for. It's about 52 inches. And so that's 8 inches of positive ease. Let me double check what the recommended ease for that one is, because I didn't write it down. Recommended ease is 9 inches, and size 4 would have been 50 inches. I ended up with 52, which should have been 54. I don't know. If I was on gauge, I should have it right. Also, I was like doing like a flat across measurement. Like I had it laid on the ground, and then I was measuring it out flat to kind of estimate what my finished bust circumference was. So that's not very precise with knit fabric, but anywho, because I feel like I'm constricted, I think that if I had actually done a size 4, it would have felt even more constricting. Also, one thing that I don't like about the pattern is this construction uses increases to shape the back panel, and you end up increasing on right side and wrong side, and that creates quite a line of holes along that increase edge. And Leslie has addressed that. It has been, people have been pointing it out to her and like complaining about it, and she was like, yeah, that's how that construction method works. And so like, yeah, I get that. Also, like, I don't like how it looks. And so I did add a crochet chain up one side. I never got around to doing the other side. I don't know why. I don't ever wear it, so it doesn't matter. But I do think that just like ties that up a little bit, makes it look a little bit more elevated, I guess. Anyways, I knit mine in Rosa Pomar Brisca. And another thing that I don't love about this is that I don't really love the yarn. It's a little bit scratchy, and it picks up lint like nobody's business. And so then I feel really like, I do not feel like Taylor Swift going to congratulate her boyfriend Travis Kelce at the AFC Championships in her like beautiful red sweater. I don't feel like that. I feel like a ragamuffin. So that doesn't help with my feelings about this sweater. And yeah, like I'm like not very sensitive to wool. I don't have anything on underneath of this. I'm wearing hinterland dress that I sewed, and yeah, it just doesn't feel that comfortable. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. I have quite a bit of this yarn left over, and I don't really want to use it because it's not that comfortable. And so, and it's very light. It's very lofty and light and not very strong. One issue I had actually is the neck band is folded over and then sewed down. And as I was pulling it over my head, like the second time I wore it, I like popped open my seam because the yarn is just like quite fragile. It actually reminds me of Brooklyn Tweed Shelter in terms of like how it's constructed, like how the yarn feels, but it's a bit scratchier than Brooklyn Tweed Shelter. So anyways, not a big win on this one for me. Don't know what I'm going to end up doing with the sweater. Oh, I was going to say I could rip it out, but because the yarn is quite fragile, I don't know if that's going to be successful or not. And I don't know what else I would make with it because it's kind of prickly. So anyways, this one was February 9th to March 16th. It used exactly 1,000 meters of yarn. I like the idea of it, but I don't love the execution of it. So next up, just now that I have it off again, I've been showing you the stitch details here, but I also found it just didn't lay very flat along that back seam, which it also appears in like quite a few of the projects on Ravelry, which I just think could be elevated just a touch more, you know? Okay, next up, another one that I am quite happy with. So this is the Friday Slipover by Petite Knit. And this I had been feeling very inspired to knit because the Fiber Nook had a sample of it hanging in their store, and every time I would go in, I'd be like, oh man, I love that so much, what is it? And I would check the tag and be like, oh yeah, the Friday Slipover. And just like this happened so many times, and then finally I was like, okay, I'm making this for myself, and I'm really happy with it. This is essentially the same color that it was in also at the store, although I did use different yarn. This one is knit with a fingering and a mohair held together to get a DK weight, 22 stitches and 34 rows in broken rib. This one is surprisingly very similar construction to this one, but it's not quite as pronounced of a like seam at the back. And so same thing though, you cast on at the back panel, knit a little ways, pick up for the front, and then knit forward. So let's see, you can see here though that this is where the seam line is, and so it's much further forward than like, you know, back here on my back, and so I don't find that it feels that same kind of discomfort. Also obviously there's no sleeves, yeah, different vibe. But I am really happy with how this one turned out. I knit mine in Holsgarn Super Soft in the color Dark Apple, and then the Isayer Silk Mohair. The sample at the Fiber Nook was also knit with an Isayer fingering weight, but so I bought the expensive silk mohair, which was beautiful and lovely to work with. And then I paired it with a much more affordable Holst garn, which I had never used before, and also really liked it. So I like this combination together. Like it's so nice, and I will probably be splurging on that Isair silk mohair again sometime. I did make some modifications on this after reading through quite a few projects on Ravelry. A lot of them noted that the neckline felt a bit small and a bit high. And so I widened the neckline by not picking up as many stitches for that front part. And so then the ones that are left in between are where the neckline is. And then I also knit some rows even. I don't remember how many are written in the pattern, but I did like quite a bit more before you start doing the shaping for the neckline here. And so that meant that I have a deeper neckline, and I'm really glad that I did that. I think that this would have been unwearable for me if I had knit it as written, because it would have felt too high, and that really bothered me. And so yes, I'm quite happy with that. I had a bit, because this is initially knit flat, and then when you join at the underarms, then you're knitting in the round, my gauge changed. So I did have to adjust needle sizes once I got to that point. Thankfully I noticed before I'd like gotten too far in. It's broken rib, and so the fabric kind of like changes quite a bit, then also with blocking. I ended up with a little bit less ease than maybe I had planned for. I cast on for size 4, which in the pattern is 41¼ inches, but my gauge was bigger, and so I was planning to have it be a bit bigger. The gauge is 22 stitches and 34 rows in broken rib. What I ended up with was 21 stitches and 31 rows. And so when I did my flat lay measurement of the bust circumference, it was like 43.5, which is technically a ½ inch of negative ease on me. I don't often wear things that are negative ease these days. But I still really like it. So it's fine. I really like the color that I chose for it, but I sometimes have a bit of a hard time finding things to go with it in my wardrobe. So yes, I feel inspired by Stephanie from Edible Thoughts Makes. She layers things so interestingly and like mixes patterns in really cool ways. I feel like she would pair this with like a plaid button down underneath and then like have this over top. So I think I need to try that because I feel like that is what Stephanie would do. Anyways, it was a pretty quick knit. I knit it from March 23rd to April 24th, and I would knit this again. I don't knit a lot of petite knit patterns, and actually I think when I talked about this initially, I was comparing it to the other Friday pattern that I have knit from her, which was a baby sweater that I knit that looks like a dishcloth, and was very happy to discover that it does not look like a dishcloth when it is in a mossy green fingering and mohair slip over. And so I really like it. I'm really happy with this one. This is definitely like more how I would wear it, is like with a short sleeve t-shirt underneath, or I guess with my like black and white checkered dress. I also would wear it with that. Okay, next up we have a bit of a mashup pattern that I call the Traveling Boulevardier. It is the stitch pattern of the Traveler series from Andrew Mowry, but I used the Boulevardier pattern by Thea Coleman. And so if you've watched probably literally any of my episodes, you've heard me talk about my favorite sweater that I've ever knit, the Boulevardier by Thea Coleman. I don't know why I love it so much. It's just like, really like the fit. I really like the yarn. I really like the stitch patterns on it. And I still have yet to knit one that I love as much as that one. Including this one. I copied that one for this sweater, but it's just not the same. But I still really like it. And so the Boulevardier pattern is knit bottom up in pieces, and it's drop shoulder, and it's actually really similar in what the Traveler looks like just the Traveler hoodie / the pullover. They actually look pretty similar, but how they're knit is different. The Traveler is also knit bottom up, but it's knit in the round until the underarms, and then you knit flat. I think the sleeves are picked up and then knit down. I did buy the Traveler pattern and then didn't use it. Because I had knit the Boulevardier in the exact same yarn as this. I didn't swatch. I just copied it exactly from my first version. This yarn is the River City Yarns Epic base, which is, River City Yarns was a yarn store in Edmonton for a long time, but they've closed a few years ago, and I bought up a whole bunch of their yarn. And so this was one that had been stashed for a while that I was very happy to get out of my stash. 1,269 meters of stash out. I did end up like having to make a few modifications because the knit and purl texture of the Traveler just like really changes, like with blocking and even just with wear. Like you can kind of tell these bottom few are just like closer together, because when I had blocked it, I had like pinned it out, and just like with time, they've kind of bunched up a little bit more. And so when I blocked my front panel and then used, I like measured it beforehand, measured it after, and then used that to make decisions about like my sleeves and make sure that it was going to be long enough and all those things. And so it all ended up working out pretty good. What I had done also with my original Boulevardier is I added short rows on the back. And so you can kind of see in the pattern here where those short rows are. The pattern doesn't tell you how to do them. It just says that you can do them. There's a note that because of the oversized fit and like the yarn that was used in the sample is very drapey, that it wasn't really needed in terms of fit. But like I mentioned before, I find that things really creep up if I don't have enough short rows. And I thought that I had taken really good notes from my original version, and I hadn't really. And so I kind of fudged something again to add those short rows in the back, but I think it worked out pretty good. And oh, I finished this. And so I cast this on in March, so March 6th, and I finished it June 17th while I was on my little solo knitting retreat that I did. And I think I was at the seaming point. I can't remember if I had more knitting to do. I don't think I would have, because I think I blocked everything before I seamed it. Oh yeah, I seamed it on the trip, and then I finished the collar, the neckband. It had kind of been a bit of a slog by that point. There was a lot of knitting and purling, you know. That's why it took me March, April, May, June, 3 months to knit. It shouldn't have, just based on the difficulty of the pattern or anything. But I finished it while I was sitting in a beautiful living room in a beautiful cabin watching Anne of Green Gables, and I like that. That just like a nice memory about it. So overall, quite happy with this one. I don't know what the yarn is made out of. Let me double check. Okay, Raveler, I think the wool, the tag just says wool. I want to say it's Peruvian. It's spun in Peru. I don't know if the wool is sourced in Peru. Anyways, Ravelry says it's 50% Corriedale, 50% Merino. I don't know enough about what Corriedale would provide to that mixture. It's not super soft, but it is not prickly like this one, which also has Merino in it. Okay, now I have to double check what that one's made out of. So it says 50% Saloia and 50% Merino Branco and Merino Preto wool, which are native breeds from Portugal. I don't need to go on and on about this yarn because it's not available anymore. I have at least 2 more sweaters quantities worth of it though. Another blue very similar to this. Maybe that's all. Anyways, I think that's everything about it. Next here is the Gramercy Tee by Tori Yu. And this was a test knit that I did for Tori. It was also the first pattern of hers that I've knit. I have like 3 more in my library now because I really liked this one. This one is top down, stripy. Can't really see my stripes, but it is striped. And this one is a saddle shoulder construction, which was also new to me. And I really like it. And I feel like everything that is European shoulder construction could instead be saddle shoulder construction. And in fact, I am using this pattern to modify my Miles shirt jacket that I'm currently knitting to have a saddle shoulder instead of the European shoulder, because I like bought the pattern, bought all of the yarn, had a plan before I realized that that's how the Miles shirt jacket is written. Anyways, this is saddle shoulder. And so you knit these 2 panels and then you pick up for the back, cast on for the back neck, and then you pick up for the front. And then this worked with the V-neck shaping. And I really like it. I definitely went for like more subtle stripes for mine. I, again, really wanted to use yarn that I already had, and this is like, I don't know when this yarn came into my possession, but it's old, and I didn't even know what it was. I'm 90% sure that it is Ancient Arts Fingering BFL sock, which they don't make anymore. And I think it's the color Fog Morning. Yeah, again, not sure. The pattern is written for sport weight, and this one is, if that is the right base, it's 340 meters per 100 grams, so I feel like that kind of fits in. And then for the stripes, I used Socknado by Ancient Arts, which is also kind of more like sport weight, 352 meters. And yeah, I really like how it ended up turning out. I tried quite a few different combinations. I knew I wanted to use this main color, but I tried a lot of different combinations for my contrast color, and yeah, I really like how this ended up working. If you didn't know it was stripes, you maybe wouldn't be able to tell. It almost kind of just looks like the color blips are pooling. I also don't know how much it shows up on camera. I feel like it shows up better in person. But this one has an option for short sleeve or long sleeve. I did short sleeve, obviously, because I wasn't sure how much yarn I was going to have, and I might go back and lengthen them, but I also knit this in June/July and have not gone back to lengthen the sleeves, so probably I will just leave it. I got gauge mostly. I knit size 5, which was 50 inches, and it's supposed to be 46 inches of positive ease, so that gave me 6 inches of positive ease. I think I would size down if I was to make it again. I don't know why, just like vibes, I guess. Like I think I could go down a size. Like it works. I like it. I wore it quite a bit, but I just feel like it wouldn't need to be so big. The size 4 is 46 inches, and so that would only give me 2 inches of positive ease, you know, so that's kind of tough. But part of why I want to maybe lengthen the sleeves is that it feels a bit woolly for a t-shirt, and so it's like, maybe it's like a spring fall option, not a summer option, which is fine. I don't have a lot of summer knits, but like I have a few. I just like don't wear them that much. So maybe if it was like 3/4 length sleeves, then it would feel a little bit more like the fabric fits in with the like style of it, you know. But overall, quite like it. Really like my colors. I think it was a good use of that mystery yarn that I had in my stash, and I enjoy testing for Tori. So let's now take a break from sweaters. Those have all been in order so far of my sweater knitting that I knit throughout the year. But now let's chat about some of my other things that I've knit. I'm not going to go into as much detail about all of them because I don't know, it just doesn't feel as important to me, but find them in my piles. My first accessory of the year was these Selbu mittens. It's a pattern by Skein Deer Knits. And I used some Brooklyn Tweed Arbor that I had in my stash for quite a while that I got from somebody else destashing. And so I just like love the black and white of these mitts. Like it's just so striking. And I wear these all the time. They're like probably a tad loose. I really like them. And yeah, I end up reaching for them a lot. Although something that is annoying, well, okay, one thing is annoying is that they pill quite a bit. So again, this is yarn that you literally cannot buy anymore. So it's not like I can say like, be careful, Brooklyn Tweed Arbor pills. But they need to shave, you know. But also my key ring of my keys frequently gets caught on a strand of these mittens. And so I'm like trying to get my keys out of my pocket as I'm going to unlock the car. Well, I'm picking up my kids from school and my kids are yelling. And all of a sudden my key ring is like stuck on a strand of this yarn. It has happened multiple times. I don't know why. Again, maybe they're a little bit loose, but I really like these. They took me 3 days. I would like to make some more Selbu mittens because they're just beautiful. I still have leftovers of the I think I only had 1 ball of each, and I have leftovers. This used 1.18 skeins. Yep, really like these. Next up was a test knit that I did for the Bluebird Box, who is a local designer to me. I've test knitted for her before. And this was just a little scarf, you know. a small scarf. And this was a pattern that she did in collaboration with Hobby. And I can't actually find the pattern on Ravelry. So it's a free pattern on the Hobby website, but I can't find it on Ravelry yet. So anyways, I should link to the Hobby website, I guess. Anyways, it's called the Mala scarf. And Anna has, I think, 2 other patterns that use this same stitch pattern. It was a good like lace practice one for me because I don't knit a lot of lace. I used John Arbin Yarnadelic, which is sport weight yarn, and I have not even worn it one time. I really like how it looks, and I really liked working the stitch pattern. This took me 1 day to knit, but I think it's not quite long enough. There's maybe 3 sizes now, I can't remember, but I think it's not quite long enough. So it's like if I only tie it around one time, like then it kind of sticks out funny. I also just like don't know if I'm a tiny scarf girly, you know, like I don't know, like that looks kind of cute, but it's like I'm not sure. This yarn also is not soft, and so that being as like a neck accessory, I don't know if that's works super great. Yeah, I should have maybe just made a larger one so that I could wrap it again around my neck. This yarn, it says 100% Corriedale. This used 0.44 skeins. So I don't know what I will do with the rest of the skein. I had bought this yarn to swatch for a different project last year. And I've had this one skein left in my, and I didn't end up using it for that project. And so I've just had this one skein kicking around, and like the color is really interesting on it. The colorway is called Badida. And yeah, I don't know. This one I might end up frogging, or I will just like become a person who wears little scarves. It's like if I had like a little thing right here, you know, like a little bolo tie. It's like that cute. I don't know. If I don't move, like this looks kind of cute, but like that's not going to stay, obviously. Anyways, I will, obviously small, tiny scarves are like all the rage right now. I just like don't know if that's me yet, you know? I still would recommend the pattern, and I'm happy with my knitting. I just like don't know if it's me, you know? Okay, I also knit 2 antler toques this year. So this was one of them. And then I also made a smaller one, which I gifted to my nephew, which he was wearing the other day when we were together for Christmas. So that was sweet. And I knit those because I was teaching how to knit cables class at Fibernook. And so this was the pattern that we were using, was the Antler Toque by Tin Can Knits. And so my green one was my like initial sample. My little one I made for my nephew was my initial sample. And then I cast on another one for myself. And the smaller one I used just Barocco Vintage, which was leftovers from a sweater that I had already knit him the year before. And then I also had a purple Barocco Vintage, which then I paired with Pro Lana Kidsetta, which is another like a silk mohair, and it's also very lovely. It's like medium price point silk mohair, so it's like not as much as the Issayer one, but like a little bit more than like Sanus Garn or like Drops. But it's really nice. The Barocco Vintage is a mixture of acrylic, wool, and nylon, and so it's already quite soft. But I quite like this. I grab it quite often when I'm running out the door to take the kids to school, so I'm happy with that. Another purple accessory that I made this year, I made 2. They're called the Snowy Headband by Veera Välimäki, and I had initially made this one from her pattern last year, except that I didn't do her pattern. I just did it in stockinette instead of in the garter stitch. And when you knit stockinette and then you put a tight I-cord on the edge of it, it just like rolled into like a little tube, and it wasn't that functional. And so this year then I ripped that out and re-knit it properly, and now it's what it's supposed to be. And I have a pair of matching mitts, and so that is also another, I don't know, I feel cute wearing my matching set. I had knit this one first actually before I reknit this one. And it took me a day. I made this the day that I was teaching my cable class because I was nervous about teaching and I needed something to do with my hands. And so once I got this started, you were just like, it was really simple. You're just like knitting garter stitch. And you have to pay attention at this twist part in the middle. But then again, once you got past that, then you just knit. And yeah, that was a good something for me to focus on that day. With this one, the pattern doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't tell you how to do the provisional cast on, how to graft them together at the end, anything. And I knew that this would happen, but I did it anyways. But I just grafted like normal. And so I have a extra stockinette row there instead of what should be a garter row. Maybe if I had knit either one less or one more row, then that wouldn't have happened. I can't remember. Anyways, with this one, I grafted it together in pattern, and you can a little bit see on the edge where it's more bulky, and like I think it's like a touch tighter in that row, you know, where I grafted it. Obviously it looks quite seamless, and so I'm not going to go and redo this one. Like, it's fine, it doesn't bother me that much, but I was quite pleased with myself to get this grafted in pattern. Just like very seamless looking. So yeah, so that was some more winter accessories. This was a skein of Wool Folk Luft that I had found while I was dealing with my everything with my yarn stash this year. And this was Ancient Arts Heritage, which is an Alberta grown wool, spun at Alberta mill, dyed by an Alberta yarn dyer. Quite happy to add those into my winter accessories. Okay, now for my favorite thing I knit this year. This is my half and half triangles wrap by Purl Soho. And it is an endless sea of garter stitch and short rows, and it is huge, and it took me forever, and I love it so much. I started this in February. I got this yarn for Christmas last year. It is the Purl Soho linen quill, and it cost an arm and a leg to ship it to Canada and then pay for duty to bring it into Canada, and we're just ignoring that. I started this in February. I finished this in August. Oh, I just love it so much. So I did not double check what the gauge was on this one, so I'm going to do that. It turned out bigger than it was supposed to. Okay, so the gauge in the pattern is 24 stitches. I have 19 stitches. So maybe that's a good life hack, is because it's the same number of stitches, but it turned out bigger. And so then you like get a bigger end product, even though you knit the same amount of knitting, you know? So I love this FO. I was totally late to the game with the like half and half triangles wrap thing. It was a huge thing years ago. Everybody was knitting them. Everybody was making multiples of them. I was not ready to immediately jump in and make another one because it was just so much knitting. It is 2,000 meters of yarn, but the end product is just like, I just love it so much. So it's big enough that like the wingspan of it is big enough that I can wrap it around my body. Sure, it's getting tangled in there. Would I ever wear this out in public like this? No. Do I wear it like this around my house when I'm cold? Yes. Tie it around my back, and then I just like have my shawl on me, you know, like I'm Claire Fraser in the Scottish Highlands. It's just great. I usually have it draped around me like this, so it's actually folded into the triangle shape, but it's so big that you can like use it as a blanket. I used Edible Thoughts Makes modifications for it, and which uses a slip stitch edge and German short rows, and so I just followed. Stephanie has like a whole video about explaining how the construction of it works, and then like the different modifications that she has made. She has made quite a few of them. So yes, this is my favorite knit of the year, and the purple is perfect. It's just, it couldn't be any better, you know. My Boulevardier sweater is still my favorite thing I've ever knit. This was my favorite thing I knit this year, absolutely. And it's like, it's so simple, but it's just it feels so nice to wrap myself up with something when I'm cozy at home, knitting on the couch, down here in my knitting room, and I like have this like draped over my couch, just like wrap it around me. I have absolutely also worn it like this. Parka around me when it was super cold and I was having to go take the kids to school or whatever. And I love it. Okay, one more random accessory before I go back to my sweaters. This is a hot water bottle cover. This was a test knit for Laura Penrose. It's called the Winter Warmer hot water bottle cover. And I made the mini version, and this was also yarn that has lived in my yarn stash for I don't know how long, years. I really want to make a bigger one. I haven't yet. At one point had plans to make like a bunch of them and then gift them over the holidays. That just never happened. But I really like this. It's just it's so sweet. I've been really enjoying using a hot water bottle. This small one is like almost too small to be practical, just because it doesn't hold heat as much as like a big one, but it was nice for my kids. Laura Penrose actually had said in one of her podcasts that she brings hot water bottles for her kids for after swimming lessons. And so I started bringing my big one last year for swimming lessons, but then they would argue about who got to hold it, like in the car ride home. And so the last couple swim lessons this year, I have two little, when I bought this one from Amazon, the hot water bottle, it came with two. And so then I would have one with the cover and one without, and they got to hold their hot water bottle as they were miserable coming out of the pool after swimming lessons. So this will absolutely, I will make more of these. The pattern is really sweet. Yes, quite like this one. Also, that took me 5 days, and it would have taken me shorter, except that I messed it up a couple times. So my gauge was off, and like it has to be quite a precise size to fit over top of the water bottle. I bought the wrong size of water bottle initially. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next sweater. Okay, this one was another long-term project, another sea of garter stitch and short rows, which I started around a similar time as my half and half triangles wrap, which I probably shouldn't have, because I was kind of sick of doing short rows and garter stitch between those two projects, but that is okay. This is the Riggy's Cardie by Gudrun Johnston, and it is from her Grand Shetland Adventure book. It's like the reason why I bought the book, although I like all of the patterns in it. And I had bought yarn for this last Christmas and cast it on in March. I knit most of it within like 2 weeks, and then I didn't finish it until November. I ran into a few snags about things, partly because I couldn't decide, well, absolutely because I couldn't decide what to do about the button band, and it went through a lot of iterations. This is interesting construction. It's worked side to side in garter stitch with short rows, and it's worked in 4 separate panels. So you have the front 2 and then the back 2, and then you do a 3 needle bind off to attach everything together, and then you pick up for the sleeve and knit those. I was going to say knit in the round, but they're absolutely seamed. So that must have been seamed, and then the side seam seamed up there as well. It's 3 sizes. It's a big blob of like oversized sweater, so I think it's fine. The chest circumference measurements are 49 inches, 57.5, and 66. And because of how it's constructed, the number of stitches that you cast on, it ends up being how long the sweater is. And I wanted it to be a little bit longer. And so I cast on for the size 3, but then I followed size 2 for all the shaping. And so in theory, it's the size 3 length and then the size 2 width. I had swatched for this project because I had bought yarn for it, like I said, like for on Boxing Day sale last year. But I repeatedly misread what kind of yarn I was buying, like what weight of yarn I bought. So the pattern is written for Jamieson's of Shetland double knitting. So DK weight yarn, 17 stitches and 34 rows and garter stitch. I had bought Istex Fiahalopi, which is actually a sport weight. And so I gauge swatched, but I did get gauge, but it was really like open and gapey and stuff, and I didn't like it. And so then I paired it with a lace weight alpaca, which didn't really alter the gauge, but it just like bulked it up a little bit and it softened it up a little bit, and I'm quite happy with that. But it ended up meaning that I like had to buy twice as much yarn to knit this. It also means that I used up 3,519 meters of yarn for this. Obviously a lot of volume, and then yeah, having the yarn held double was a lot. If I measure it, when I had it laid flat, and if I measure it from side seam to side seam, and then there's an opening in the middle, it was 63 inches width, and it was supposed to be 57 and a half. I added buttons to mine and a fold over button band, which was not in the pattern. That was part of my dilemma, and why I didn't finish it for ages, is because the button band in the pattern is garter rib, which is the same as like the edgings and stuff. I don't really love the look of the garter rib, and I thought, I know I'll do double knit button band. The gauge was all wonky on that. I was gonna knit a button band on my knitting machine and then sew it on. Couldn't figure that out. Eventually I just picked up, for the button band as written in the pattern, I just knit it twice as long and then folded it over, and then I added the buttons. And I added, like, I made 2 buttonholes then, right? Because it's like I would knit up to this point, add a buttonhole, keep knitting, add another buttonhole, and then when you fold them over, then they line up together. And then I kind of stitched them together so that the like 2 ends of the fabric don't come apart. I then knit the pockets twice because they were the wrong size at first. I somehow seamed them on incorrectly, so they look like they're different sizes, even though I'm pretty sure they're not. This was a bit of a labor of love. However, I really like the finished object. It's exactly what I wanted it to be in terms of like oversized, throw over anything, has pockets for me to put my phone in, cozy, wear it around the house. Like, that's exactly what I wanted it to be, and that is exactly what it is. One thing that's kind of silly, I can't remember, I think I showed this in my podcast when I was showing it off, but like, I was so adamant about having these pockets, and then like they're so stretchy that like it makes my phone feel like it weighs 1,000 pounds, because it's just like drags the pocket way down. But it's practical for when I'm like shoving stuff in my pocket so I can like carry all my knitting downstairs or something. So also it doesn't need buttons. Like, it's not meant to have buttons. When I button it up, it like pulls the side seams forward. Like, it's meant to have like an opening. If I would have had to knit like a wider width to actually like have the buttons really make sense, but I don't care because I wanted buttons, and so it's worked out. It's a bit scratchy because the Istex yarn is not soft, but also it's like I would rather wear this than the Rosa Pomar Briska. I think I just like it just feels so cozy that I really like it. So one thing I did that I was quite happy with my modification, I had initially done the I-cord bind off as suggested for the top of the pocket, but it was quite tight and I just didn't like it. And so I did an Icelandic bind off, which I've never done before, but it works great for garter stitch. It just like blends in really nicely with that. And maybe I will unpick my pocket seaming at some point and fix them so that they don't look uneven, but I don't know if it feels worth it to me or not. So yes, this was March till November. I wore it before I added the button bands because it was still functional, like it was all seamed up and everything. But now that it's just all done, it stays better like on my shoulders now with the collar on, and I really like it. So I wasn't, I'm normally a process knitter. This wasn't really a process knit for me. It was just I was very motivated by the finished project, like the end product, and it was worth it. So, okay. Next up was another test knit that I did. This is the Affric by Clow. And this is top down, raglan, worsted weight, color work. You have these different color work bands. Rebecca's is knit with a lace plus DK, with 17 stitches. I ended up with 18 stitches, kind of. I had a really hard time getting gauge on this project. And I had bought my entire sweaters quantity and then couldn't get gauge. And so that was a little bit annoying. And I ended up, again, having to buy, I have fluff and hair and, okay. So this, again, was another time where I ended up having to buy a lace weight to pair with my main yarn in order to get the gauge that I needed. And so my main yarn is Gathering Yarns Haynes Creek, which is listed as worsted or Aran, depending on where you look. I've discovered that worsted weight is a very broad category and is knit at a variety of gauges. I had a tough time getting 17 stitches, especially with the color work. When I'm knitting color work, if there's a section of plain knitting without color work, I always size down my needle. And so I was already doing that. So I had one size needle for the plain sections, and I would go up a size needle for the color work sections. I should have gone up even one more. And so I knit the plain sections on 5mm, and I knit the color work at 5.5mm needles. And they are tighter. They're a tighter gauge. And so when I did the sleeves, I actually went up one more and did 6mm for the color work. I think that I probably should have been doing that the whole sweater. Overall, I like how it fits. I blocked it very precisely. I don't know how well it has stayed in that exact shape, but it was user error with my yarn choice and my gauge and whatever. This yarn it just says 100% wool. I'm not sure what type of wool it is. It's very nice and it's quite affordable. 100% pure Highland wool. And then it paired with the Sandisgarn Tin Silk Mohair. It's very nice and cozy. And it is a bit of a heavier sweater. It's quite warm. I'm really quite happy with how it turned out after all of my issues with my gauge and stuff. I swatched so many times. I don't enjoy swatching, but it ended up being, yes, very cozy, and I was quite impressed with my yarn color matches. I bought the Haynes Creek heathers in person at Fibernook, and so then I could which was good because I ended up swapping one of my colors out. But then I bought the mohair sight unseen online, and I think they matched up pretty good. I have quite a bit of yarn from this project left over that I'm trying to decide what to do with. I think I maybe have enough to make some sort of slip over. I don't know. Would that be weird if I had a slip over color work pattern that was essentially these same thing? I don't know. I knit the size 7, which is 47.5 inches in the pattern. Mine's a touch smaller than that because my gauge was a touch tighter, but pretty close. Rebecca's pattern has a very wide size range in her patterns. It's very intentional about size inclusivity. This one has 15 sizes and goes up to a finished chest measurement of 69.5 inches. So I always appreciate that about Rebecca's patterns. This used 1,855 meters, and I knit this in the middle of summer because it was a test knit. So this was middle of July to middle of August. I knit this, and so it was nice once the weather cooled down and I could pull it out and actually wear it. Yeah, I really like it. I really like my colors. like I said, I liked how my colors matched between my main color and my mohair colors, but I also just like the colorways I chose. If I was to knit it again, I would add more short rows in the back, just to like give myself a little bit more space down here. I'll show you what the back looks like. I can't remember right now if it's if you cast on completely in the round or if you cast on flat and then join in the round. I can't remember right now, but it doesn't really matter. There's different ways of doing that. So anyways, I've been wearing this quite a lot this winter. Okay, one more test knit to show off. This is the Karuna cardigan by Ellis Knitwear. This is DK weight, oversized drop fit. The pattern description calls it like 80s inspired oversized fit, and it is knit bottom up in the round with steeks, and so there's a steek at the front and at the armholes and then also at the neck. This is my next favorite knit of the year. I'm so happy with how this turned out. It's so striking. I just am so happy with it. So it was a lot of knitting. It's a lot of color work, and I had a bit of an adventure with my steeks, but overall, like, very happy with it. I ended up with a little bit less ease than I was supposed to because my stitch gauge was a touch tighter. it's supposed to be 21 stitches. I had 22. And so it's just like a little bit tighter than it's supposed to be. From my like flat lay measurement, I got 50 inches. I was supposed to have 54. And I think it feels like more than 50 inches. I'm not sure. Anyways, it's not quite as oversized as it was intended to be, but I really like how the fit turned out. And the armhole isn't too deep, and this is also in Brooklyn Tweed Arbor, which was also stash that I had bought from somebody destashing. When I bought they had these two colors plus the one skein of black and white each. And so I used up a lot of this stash, but I still have more left over, which might turn into a hot water bottle cover, actually. We'll see. But yes, I quite like this. The colorway here is Morandi and Sashiko, and I used 1,600 meters of yarn. I decided to try needle felting my steek, which I had like mixed results about. I should have needle felted it a little bit more than I did, and so some of my stitches started to come loose here, and I had to like find the little strands and like tie them into little knots, and then I went back and re-needle felted it a little bit more. I should have picked up for my button band before I cut my steek, and so just because like that act of like picking up stitches for the button band adds a bit of extra tension on that steek space, and my needle felting just was not good enough. It all worked out fine, so it doesn't matter. I made one small modification on the sleeves and just changed how the decreases worked at the end of the sleeve so that they weren't right next to each other, because I found that they were really kind of pulling apart and making a hole, and so I didn't like that. And if I could go back, and I might actually like duplicate stitch it, I wish that the pickup at the arm was picked up in pattern, because with like it all being the all over color work everywhere, and then there's just one line at the arm of just the solid blue, and so I maybe one day will go back and duplicate stitch in the gray just to like blend in that seam more. I don't know. It would be, I think, low effort, high reward for me to do it. So we'll see. We'll see if I actually do or not. But overall, just like very happy with how this turned out. There was definitely some things in the pattern that I found a bit confusing. When I have worked patterns in the past that use a steek, I find like people have different ways of explaining where the steek should go and where the beginning of round should go and what to do when you get to the steek. This pattern also has at the side, you can see that like there's a break in the pattern, and that's so that can be graded, right? Like it's quite a wide stitch repeat, and so to make sure it's centered on the front and on the back, then there like that pattern has to break somewhere, and so it's on the side seam, and so that could have been explained a little bit more clearly, I think, in the pattern. And I kind of wish that there was like, I don't know, maybe this is me contradicting myself now after saying that I didn't like this one blue line here, but like I've done other patterns like the Do You Yoke, the mystery yoke one that I did from Zanetti Knits, how she grades her patterns is that to try and keep the large motifs where they should be, is that there's a break in the pattern at the underarms or like down the sleeve and stuff. And so she has you do a purl stitch in the background color to act kind of like a faux seam. And I think that that might have been nice up the side. I don't know. I'm just being nitpicky, you know? Overall, like, I really love it. And I've been wearing it a lot. Only thing is, I kind of wish that there was pockets. That's like, I don't know. I feel like that could work. Like, I could like go with it. But it'd have to be like pockets like in pattern, I think, right? Otherwise they would stand out too much if they were just in the blue. But sometimes I find me like it feels like it should have pockets. I'm like reaching to like put my phone in my pocket or something and then it's not there. I don't think I'll go back and add that. I think maybe if I was to knit another kind of like oversized cardigan like this, then I would want one with pockets. I don't know. Yeah, I really like it. I wouldn't probably knit it again because I don't need two of the exact same sweater, but I would knit it again just because it was an enjoyable knit and I really like the finished object. So maybe I'll have to knit some more of MJ's patterns. Yeah, I think that's everything about that one. Okay, one more sweater to show you, which you will not have seen the FO before. So ready? Ta-da! And the reason why I wore my Hinterland dress today is so that because this will be my outfit with my finished ranunculus. So this is technically my third ranunculus that I've knit. The first one I frogged. My second one I really like, and I knit it last summer, and I wanted another one. And so partly again, I was using up yarn that I have had for years that I didn't know what to do with, that I found while I was dealing with the bug thing. And I think that this was like a perfect project for it. I knit it off gauge completely. I also knit it without swatching and made a lot of modifications as I went. The pattern gauge is 14 stitches and 20 rounds. I have 20 stitches and 29 rounds. And I knit mine in Wool Baron fingering weight, although it's 389 meters per 115 grams. Let me figure out what that is actually per 100 grams, because otherwise it doesn't make sense in my brain. 312 meters per 100 grams. Okay, I just had to double check it again because I hate misspeaking. I was right, 312 meters per 100 grams. So it's more like a sport weight. And I ended up with a little bit less ease than I was maybe planning to have. This sweater is designed to be like quite oversized. But mine ended up being like almost a little bit of negative ease, which is, I think is fine. I really like how it looks. I just finished it December 22nd and blocked it, and it's ready to go for the summer, I guess. And probably with this exact outfit minus the wool tights that I'm wearing right now. When I knit this pattern last summer, I again made quite a few modifications, was not following gauge, just like measured kind of as I went, made some changes as I went, and thought again that I had written myself better notes than I actually had. And so when I went to actually knit this one, then turns out I just had to like do a bunch of like calculations again, which I guess I had to anyways because my gauge was really different. This yarn also grew quite a bit when I was steam blocking it as I went. So it was kind of hard to like have a precise measurement, I guess, of like, you know, how big it was going to be and how deep the yoke was going to be and all of that. The pattern is written as the top part is round yoke construction, and then there's raglan shaping to get to the different sizes. I ended up skipping the raglan shaping, just added some more round yoke shaping. I've added an extra slip stitch pattern. I had tried to change the lace bit into like a texture stitch or something, but you like couldn't even see it at all with this yarn, and like it didn't look very good. So ripped that back, added the lace instead like normal, and then just like, yeah, added a lot of variable increases to get to the circumference that I wanted. And I knit the sleeves like a little bit longer than my other one, just like a tad. And I think I did a touch longer in the length as well. And so I think it's still maybe a little bit short if I was just going to wear it like with high-waisted jeans or something. But over a dress, it's perfect. And I alternated skeins on this one, which was very important because the skeins were wildly different from each other. And I just like twist them as I go. I don't do like helical knitting or anything. Probably because I don't really know how. Like I kind of have an idea, but I'd have to like look it up and do it. I just twisted them as I went. The back short row section I worked in one color, and I think you can tell that it's like it was darker. I also didn't add the short rows in the front. I don't know why they're there, and added extra short rows in the back. What else did I do? Yeah, I think just like changed my increases a lot. I ended up increasing up to a point that I could use the numbers for the splitting for sleeves from like one of the other sizes. So like size, it ended up being size 7. That was the number of stitches that I had on my needles, and so that meant I didn't have to do a lot of calculations for like figuring out the sleeve separation. So that was handy, and I feel like it was a good use of my yarn. So I had considered knitting longer sleeves just to like use up yarn because I was trying to get rid of it, right? It was just random yarn I had in my stash. I used 1.5 skeins. I have half a skein remaining, and I don't know what it's going to be. That's part of what has been overwhelming about my yarn collection is like leftover bits from projects. So I don't know what half a skein of like superwash merino will turn into, you know? Anyways, also the yarn base is called Everything But Socks because it doesn't have any nylon in it. It's just merino. So it's like I can't even like make a pair of shorty socks with it. It literally says Everything But Socks in the title. So yeah, I think I'm really glad I alternated skeins because I think that it would have been really like a stark contrast between it. It's almost a little bit too variegated for me, but it's fine. Like if this was a full sweater, then I feel like I wouldn't like how variegated it is, but because it's like a t-shirt and it's like supposed to be easy breezy like that, it feels like it's okay. I don't know why exactly, but that's what I'm gonna say. I started this in October, finished it in December, and it will get tucked away in my sweater closet now until it's warm out, but I'll wear it right now while I tell you about some of my other knitting. I made 4 pairs of socks this year. Here's the honorable mentions for the socks. I made 2 other toques that I will not show you right now. I will show you the toque I just finished because I finished it literally at like 11:30 p.m. on New Year's Eve. I was working on a classic ribbed hat by Pearl Soho with also some yarn I've had forever. This is Lily and Pine. This is their Sunflower DK base. Lily and Pine has sadly closed now. This was Merino, Alpaca, and Yak. It's very squishy and soft and feels very nice. I bought this at Stash Lounge probably 2 summers ago. The colorway is called the Darkest Timeline. And so when I saw that, I was like, obviously I have to buy that because I live in the darkest timeline of my life. It's blue and purple. So like, it's perfect. So yeah, I really like it. I knit it quite a bit longer than what the pattern said to, because initially I knit it to pattern and then it felt a bit short. Now it's maybe a touch long, but it's very soft, and I wanted to have like the fold up brim. I do not like when toques have the nipple on the top. I do not know why that is the style right now, but I don't look cool in a toque. I look like I am Canadian mother taking my kids to school in the cold, which I am. But anyways, we watched season 3 of Stranger Things on New Year's Eve, and I finished my toque while we did that. Season 3, just to say that again, we just started season 4 yesterday. I still have 2 seasons to go. I am still unspoiled of the entire show somehow, even though everybody's talking about it right now. I'm really enjoying it. It's so scary. It's not that scary, but like it's scary for me. But yeah, we were watching Stranger Things on New Year's Eve, and then all of a sudden we like heard fireworks going off, and it was like, oh, it's midnight, and I finished this before midnight, and so it got to count as a 2025 make. Okay, one more thing I will show you that I actually have still in person, even though it is a gift, is this cute sweater. So this is the bird sweater by Knitting for Olive. It is intarsia, worked flat in pieces and then seamed up. And I made this for my friend's son, and she lives in Vancouver, but I think I'm going to see her next month. They're going to be in Alberta visiting, and so I think I'll get to see her, and my plan is that I was going to mail it to them, but I was like, oh, I might as well just like give it to them in person. I'm really hoping it fits. I need to block it still. It was a quick little knit. It's fingering held double. The intarsia obviously is like adds some like harder like process to it, but it was quite fun to knit. And my plan is to also knit a little bird like matching stuffy to go with it, just because I think it's cute and I found a cute pattern that's perfect. And so yes, this was my another project this year that I haven't showed off much. I filmed quite a bit of it during Vlogmas, and then I just like didn't include it for some reason. And yeah, I knit this from November 27th to December. Oh, I finished on December 19th. Yeah, it's really cute. So my son, my 7-year-old, was almost like, oh, that's so cute, Mom, can I have one? But I'm like, I don't trust him to actually wear something that I knit. See the pair of socks and toque that I knit for him this year that have not been worn. If you all have watched my Vlogmas, you saw me making a bunch of gnomes, and then I also made a little snowman. So I made gnomes for my kids' teachers for Christmas gifts this year. And then I also made a little mini snowman for my mom. I also very last minute decided that I wanted to make headbands for my parents. And so we had their names for Christmas. And so we had like gotten them a gift, but I was like, oh, I want to knit something for them too. And so I cast on the week of Christmas to make this headband for my mom. So my mom has this really beautiful Kiviak sweater. And so it is Kiviak merino and silk blend. And it's very beautiful and cabled, and it's light and super warm, and she's had it for years and she wears it all the time. And she wore it on a trip last year, and it just had it's lived a good life, and it started to wear on the sides, and so there was a little hole developing. And I don't remember if my mom noticed it initially and then told me about it, or if I was like, Mom, there's a hole in your sweater. So anyways, I was like, can I please fix it? And so she bought one little ball of yarn that matched. It's just a natural, like undyed, of that same blend in the spring. And I knit little patches that matched the cable pattern on those two sections on the sides and repaired her sweater. It was a very fancy sweater, and it still had life left in it, but there was holes. And so there was a couple other spots that like, a stitch had been snagged or something. And so I did a couple of little repairs that hadn't like turned into a hole yet, but they would have, kind of thing. And so yeah, I had this little tiny ball of yarn, 28 grams. I used like 2 grams of yarn to do this repair. And so I still had this little tiny ball of yarn. And so I wanted to make my mom a headband with it. And so on the Windy Valley Muskox website, they have a handful of patterns. And I have a ball of 100% pure Kiviak wool that I got when I was first learning how to knit. I haven't used because I'm scared to, but they have quite a few patterns that are like one skein projects. So this headband was one of them. So I was like, okay, perfect. I knew I wasn't going to run out of yarn then. And it's knit, it was a cabled headband, but then it's double layered. And so you knit the cable pattern, and then you knit a stockinette section, and you make a big rectangle, and then you seam it together. And so it's double thickness, and then grafted at the back. I knit this in like 2 days for my mom for Christmas, and with this like beautiful special yarn, and it matches her sweater. And yeah, I hope that I might have given it to her now. Hopefully she enjoys it. I still have yarn left over. I used 19 grams of the 28 grams, and I had probably 26 grams left. So anyways, there's still a little bit left. If I ever have to do another repair on her sweater, it's very soft yarn. And so it pills quite a bit, and it's just like the merino and silk added to that blend, like makes it stronger, right? She has worn it a lot. So anyways, that's the story of the headband that I knit for my mom. But then I was like, well, I have to knit something for my dad too. And so I made him a headband, and had planned to, I had a ball of alpaca, 100% alpaca, also from Windy Valley Muskox, and made a little, I was doing it on my knitting machine, because then we were really cutting it close to like when we were going to see them for Christmas. And I did a little swatch on my knitting machine and crunched some numbers and started to make this headband for my dad, and then realized it was like this long. Like, it didn't wrap around. It was this long. And I was like, oh. I was like, I don't know what I had done. Miscalculated, clearly. And it's like, if it was going to be long enough to actually like wrap around his head, it was going to be like this thick. So it's like useless. So scrap that plan with that ball. I could hand knit something. I was just trying to use my knitting machine because I literally like, it was down to the wire. And so then I was working on my 1x1 rib, classic ribbed hat. So I was like, oh, I know, I'll make him a 1x1 ribbed hat on my knitting machine. Like, that's an easy stitch pattern to do on the knitting machine. So again, made a little swatch, crunched my numbers, knit. It would be knit flat, and then I was going to seam it. I got to the point where I was going to have to do the decreases and started to do the math for that. And I was like, this isn't adding up. Like, I don't have enough stitches here. No, I had half the number of stitches that I would have needed. And so his toque would have also been like this big. Like, okay. So I ended up making a 1x1 rib headband, very similar to the one I had made for my son earlier in the year, just a bit wider, that I still haven't finished for my kid, but I knew what to do because I had already done this. And so I knitted as long as I thought it might need to be, literally brought it and like wrapped it in the gift bag with my mom's, but it was like still on the needles. And then my dad pulled it out at Christmas, and we measured it, and I knit a little bit more on it just by hand, obviously, because I was at their house, and then grafted it while I was there. And again, grafted in pattern. And so it was like grafting 1x1 ribbing. And so that it took a little bit of extra brain power for me. But it looks quite nice. So anyways, they both have new headbands. I was really like, yeah, coming in under the wire there with my last few projects of the year, literally in the last few days of the year. But folks, I think that's everything. Overall, I knit 23,141 meters of yarn, which was 6,507 grams. I will not tell you how much I spent on yarn or how much came into my collection this year, because I don't want to. But you know what? It was actually pretty similar to last year. And last year I had some more yarn that was just destashed and not knit. So I had said that I had knit less this year than I thought, but than previous years, but maybe not. I knit 23,000 meters of yarn, and that's a lot. I've added some beautiful things to my collection. My son frequently asks me, like, Mom, what are you making? Like, oh, I'm making a sweater. Is it for you? Like, yeah. Mom, you have a lot of knitted sweaters. Like, yeah. What do you mean? Like, I love knitting sweaters. That's the main thing that I like to knit. I love having my sweater like wardrobe in my bedroom and seeing them all there, and like, it makes me so happy. I will continue. I have so many sweaters planned for 2026. I'm just going to keep knitting the things that I love. I would happily knit him sweaters too, if only he would wear them, but that's not going to happen. So I think that's everything. Probably I will have everything linked below in the show notes. I also have talked about almost all of these projects in a podcast episode at some point in the last year, if you feel like having even more information about all of these things. I really enjoyed actually going through my projects for the year. I wouldn't have remembered that this was from this year. It was the first thing I finished, I think, in 2025. And I could have sworn it was the year before, you know? And there was other things that I'm like, oh, I thought I knit that this year, but like, no, I knitted the year before. And so it's kind of fun to like look through and like see everything that I've made and what's worked and what didn't work. And like, happily, most of it is things that I really enjoy. And I have some plans for the new year about like some different techniques I want to try, more yarn to turn into things. Thanks to everybody who has hung out with me this year as I chat with you about all of my knitting. I really appreciate it. And here's to another year of knitting. Bye. Take care.